Wolf.
Stand by. Good. Speed in 5.
All right, let's take it 5, 4, 3, 2.
The ladder of success is never crowded at the top, and at the top of the acting profession is the gentleman with me now, William Conrad of NBC's new show called Nero Wolfe. And Mr. Conrad, tell us about Nero Wolfe. I'm excited about what I saw.
Well, thank you. We're excited about it, too. Nero Wolfe is a character written in something like 50 or 60 novels by a man by the name of Rex Stout. And Nero Wolfe is an obese, if you'll excuse the expression, detective who never leaves his house. He has a brownstone in New York City, and he grows orchids, and he has a lake man who goes out and gets all of his information for him and brings him back to him, and he, being supposedly the brightest of all intellectual detectives, puts everything together and solves the case. That basically is what it's all about.
You've done so many things, and acting and producing and directing, and the original radio voice of Matt Dillon, the Gunsmoke, of course, everyone knows Cannon. How have you changed in your career as an actor over all these years?
I don't really think I've changed at all. Perhaps I have. I don't know, but I've never, nobody ever asked me that question before. That's a good question. I really don't know. Have I changed? You can tell me. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm fascinated by the character Nero Wolfe. About the cerebral part of him, I guess, excites me. And from what I saw, I'm going to be trying with you to solve the crime as the show goes along.
Well, that's always fun, you know, to have what they call a closed mystery instead of an open one. An open one is where everybody knows who done it, and they watch the detective track it down and let him find out. In a closed one, nobody knows who done it, except the detective is the first one to find out, and he lets everybody know in the last act. But those are always much more fun than the open one, and that's what this is, the closed.
Sure. What has success given you, and what has it taken away?
Oh, it's given me an awful lot of things. It's given me enough money to not do things I don't want to do. It has given me a nice home and capability of doing things for people. The only thing that it's done in the way of taking away is perhaps your privacy. Because once you become a personality, well, it's difficult to go to the supermarket without somebody stopping you and or to a baseball game. I haven't been to a baseball game in years, and I love baseball because of that, because you either end up signing autographs all during the game or getting into fights with people because you say, I don't want to be rude, but I don't, I came to watch the game. You can't win one way or the other, so you just don't go. So that's the only negative to the whole thing as far as I can see. I wish it were possible to do your work and then go home and be totally anonymous, but that is not possible. So.
From what I saw, Nero Wolfe will not be anonymous, and I feel the vibes of a good show, and we're anxious to watch it.
Thank you. I hope you all like it, too.
William Conrad, this is Frank Bissoni in Los Angeles.
Он живет в Нью-Йорке, не доверяет женщинам. Изысканный гурман. Любитель технологий и машин. Знаток литературы. Хозяин оранжереи орхидей. Имеет блестящую память и гениальный ум. 33 романа и 39 повестей. Экранизация в 3 странах. Легендарный частный детектив Ниро Вульф раскрывает преступление, не выходя из дома. Его гениальность заключается в том, что он умеет собрать воедино все сведения, добытые его помощником Арчи Гудином, проанализировать их и найти преступника.
Oh, I'm on. No one told me. My next guest invented a fictional character some years ago, is possibly more famous than his creator. Nero Wolfe is a super sleuth, as you know. He's supposed to be the best detective in the world, lives in a brownstone on West 35th Street, and he's in a class with himself, like the masters from Sherlock Holmes to Monsieur Dupin and all of those cats. Rex Stout is quite a colorful figure in his own way, the creator of Nero Wolfe. He's president of the Authors League of America, a man of many commitments. Gourmet cooking is one of his specialties. And in current biography, I noticed that he was born in 1886. I'm happy to report he's still going strong. There's a new Rex Stout, Nero Wolfe, out now. Will you welcome a prodigious and prolific gentleman, Rex Stout. I meant to have an orchid here for you, but slipped my mind. Do you ever resent the fact that certain critics feel that your form, the mystery, is a minor form of literature? I know Edmund Wilson wrote a piece called "Who Cares Who Killed Roger Ackroyd" or something like that. Wow. Does that bother you?
Well, how did you know that he wrote that before you were born? I think that was a long while ago.
I've lied about my age.
Well, that attitude to mystery stories is just one form of snobbery, and you don't argue with snobs. They're just snobs, that's all.
I see. Hope you're watching, Wilson. How many Nero Wolfes are there now? I know there's a list about that long, but I don't know how many are in it.
Well, there are 34 book-length stories and 36 or 7 shorter ones.
Yeah. How do you plot them out? That's what I guess everybody would like to know. Whenever you read one, there's always a dilettante feeling of how fun it would be to write one of these. But when you get down to it, I'm sure it would be very, very hard. Do you know where you're going and when you start out?
When I start, I haven't the faintest idea.
Really?
I know one or two things about the story, but what they're actually going to say, no, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are two ways, any kind of a story, a detective story or any other kind, there are really two ways to do it. One is to have an idea about who your people are and the kind of things they're going to do, and then sort of let them take over.
Mm-hmm.
And quite a few of the best storytellers have told stories that way, but others will write a complete outline, 20,000 words of the whole thing, giving every little piece of action, everything but the dialogue. Well, it isn't so. I think that one way is better than the other. It just depends on how you like to do it.
But you will sometimes write yourself into a corner and then see how you can get out of it.
Do you play chess?
No, I don't.
Well, once in a while, playing a game of chess, you'll get yourself in a corner. But if you're any good at all, you won't do that. No, I don't write myself into a corner.
You don't?
When I was 7 years old, living on a farm in Kansas,
right,
I painted myself into a corner of the kitchen, and that taught me a lesson.
Not to live in Kansas.
No, not to live in Kansas. Right.
We'll get postcards about that. I know you're sore about the copyright laws, and I didn't find out why. Here's my chance.
Oh, Lord, how much time have we got?
Mo, take 10 seconds.
Good.
No, we have time.
No, the copyright law in this country, our domestic copyright law, was passed in 1909, 60 years ago. And it says that if I build a house or make a table or make a chair, then it's mine. Yeah. It's mine for good. If I die, I leave it to whomever I want to. But if I make a book, it's only mine for 28 years.
How'd they come up with that number?
Because, I don't know, probably pull it out of a hat. Mm-hmm. because that's what the copyright law says. It belongs to me for 28 years.
You mean someone could make a movie now out of a book you wrote 29 years ago? And you
Now,
don't get it?
if during that 28th year, if you're not in an insane asylum or something, and if you're not in Asia and remember things,
Or paint
you
it
can
into
renew for another 28 years.
Oh, I see.
So that's a total of 56. There are a lot of important new things in what we want is a revision of the copyright law. But the most important one is that the term of copyright will be not forever, as the table or chair or house would be, but for the life of the author plus 50 years.
Seems fair.
And that's the most important single thing in what we are after in the revision of the copyright law.
Yeah. Are you aware of the theory that, I'm sorry, Eartha.
I was going to ask, suppose you write a book, like we were talking about before, and
Yeah.
certain parts of the book is censored, and then you want to republish the same book again. Could you do that under another name? And then there are just some of the story parts of the story is
Oh, you
different.
mean, would you still own the copyright?
Yes.
Oh, yes, because the original copyright would cover that. Sure you could.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Well, try it once.
Okay.
Are you aware of the theory that's made the rounds that Nero Wolfe is the illegitimate son of Sherlock Holmes?
That has been said, yeah.
You mean I didn't think that up?
I meant it's been said by you.
Oh, yes,
now.
just now. So that's where I heard it, eh? Yeah. There's no truth to this, I hope. Although it could be possible, couldn't it? Because after the Reichenbach Falls, or whatever it was, Holmes was not seen for a while.
I suppose, but I just don't know. I wasn't there that night.
No? Well, I have evidence that he was in a motel with Irene Adler.
I thought so. Well, you can be sure it wasn't a motel because there weren't any there.
There wasn't even an Irene Adler. I made that name up.
Right.
Well, there was an Irene Adler. We're going to hear from her descendants.
Speaking of Sherlock Holmes, there's an interesting little fact about him that has some bearing on whether mystery stories are a minor form of literature. Of all the hundreds of thousands of characters that have been created in fiction in the last 300 years, both in the drama and in narrative, in novels, by far the best one known all over the world is Sherlock Holmes.
Is that so?
Well, it's too bad that stories about him aren't literature, isn't it?
Yes. I think they're going to have to be
Well,
redefined.
We'll just have to grin and bear it.
You wrote a book once in which the actual FBI figured, and J. Edgar Hoover, and used all the real names and people. And I know the FBI is very conscious of its image and what's written about it and all. Did they cooperate with you in the writing of this book?
And J. Edgar Hoover wrote it.
Go on.
No, did they cooperate with me?
I mean, did you?
Well, obviously you haven't read the book, or you wouldn't ask that question.
I thought I'd trap you by painting myself into a corner. No, I haven't read the book. My copy was stolen on the subway. How do you like them apples?
They went around stealing them all over the country.
It really was. It was a friend of mine found it. It's got a green cover and paperback. I started it, and it was taken on the IRT. In fact, I've been taken on the IRT a couple of times. What's the name of that one?
The doorbell rang.
Right. I'm reading the one now about the lady who's looking for her father. What's the title of that?
Naturally, it's called The Father Hunt.
That's right. Just wanted to see if you knew. Are you interested in orchids, or is it just your friend Nero Wolfe?
I have about 220 house plants, and only 10 of them are orchids. Not that I have anything against orchids, but they're just, orchids are so darn fussy. They're almost as fussy as women.
Yeah.
And
much prettier, though.
and yeah. Well, now wait a minute.
Well, I'm thinking of those ones in the subway.
Oh.
The orchids, I mean, not the wimp. You know those orchids you get in the subway, and they've put glitter and false diamonds on them and all of that?
Who gets orchids in a subway?
Dick is in a corner. He doesn't know how to get out of it.
The question is, who gets orchids in the subway? Winos on their way to a prom. I don't know. Oh, I can amuse myself endlessly. We'll be back after this message.
I read Nero Wolfe for the first time, and I got hooked very quickly on these stories. Set in an old brownstone in Manhattan with this overweight private detective, genius who loved good food and raising orchids, and we'd be reading 3 books at any one time, and his sidekick, the rather smart alecky Archie Goodwin, who would go out and dig up the clues and bring in the suspects and present them to the great man. One of the geniuses of Rex Stout was he could make all of these suspects equally believable as the killer. Nero Wolfe peels back the layers of the mystery. So Inspector Kramer of New York Homicide is right there in the room when Wolfe says, "That's the guilty party."
You'll pay for this, Wolf. Mr. Kramer, I've seen enough of him.
Get him out of here. Let's go.
Improbable? Yeah, it is. But it makes wonderful reading, and only the genius of a guy like Rex Stout, to my mind, could pull that off so well. These are pure mysteries in which the mystery has to be solved in more clear-cut ways, and they involve the personalities of the people more than anything that is of a scientific nature. Reading a Nero Wolfe book to me is like slipping on a very comfortable pair of shoes that just slide on, and you just let the story then carry you along. You're in that world, you're in that brownstone. You're in that office lined with bookcases with a giant globe of the world over in one corner. You just have a comfortable feeling.
My name is Nero Wolfe. I work with crime, against it.
April 6, Florida. This is the way it happened. This is the way the newspaper said it happened, allowing for 16% lousy reporting, which is normal, and 19% inaccuracy, which is inevitable. This is the way it probably happened. The occasion? A 7th attempt to shoot the moon. These men were doing all the work. These were only the scientists who built the missile. Dr. Wolfgang of the Air Force Missile Center. Associate Professor Adams of the Carnegie Institute of Technology. Christian Lowenberg of the Belson Aeronautics Company. Ernest Patchen of the Missile Development Center.
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
That was how and when Dr. Christian Lowenberg, missile scientist, died at the precise moment of the takeoff of Moon Missile number 7. Now, I'd be inclined to say on this Monday morning, 6 days later, that we occupants of the private house on West 35th Street, New York City, were about as deeply concerned with the death of Christian Lowenberg as the man on the moon. In the first place, I had a much bigger problem on my hands. Nero Wolfe had a cold.
Where are you? 13 seconds late. Your feet are cold on time.
At the start of a fever, we're debating which to do.
Well, whether to kill me or cure me, Archie, I'm horizontal, but I'm not helpless.
Yes, sir.
Only Fritz would think of a hint of sage in a plover omelet.
How true. Well, what do we got here? Oh, look. The Yanks take a game from the Sox.
Good.
All right. Associates in tribute to Lowenberg, April 12th, special to the New York Gazette. The widow of Christian Lowenberg today released to the press the text of messages sent to her by friends and admirers of her late husband. Dr. Lowenberg, who was a 5-gold polo player and a sailing enthusiast, as well as one of the world's leading space scientists, collapsed and died last Wednesday at the very moment of the takeoff of the Neptune missile. His death was attributed to heart failure brought on by the strain he must have endured at the very moment of launching. My late husband, said Mrs. Lowenberg.
No.
What's the matter?
I dislike widows born depressed before the body is cold in the grave.
You want more serious people?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well, how about this? Financial statement of the Wolf household, drawn up by A. Goodwin for N. Wolf and signed in blood.
I'm a sick man.
Sick, Schmick. The fact of the matter is, your accounts show that you owe $6,000.
You're ruining my breakfast.
And 98 cents.
$6,000?
And 98 cents.
How's that possible?
There's your Rembrandt etching, shipment of orchids from Bimini.
How many days ago did that moon person die?
6 days, but I fail to see what one has to do with the other.
Let the connection between the death of a scientist and our financial affairs remain obvious only to me. It takes genius to see that relationship. There is only one genius in this room at this time.
Mm-hmm.
What is that in the second paragraph about the dead man's athletic ability?
Bless you.
Never mind. Take out your pad. These are your instructions for the day. Call the papers and tell them that Nero Wolf said Christian Lowenberg was murdered.
Murdered?
After you've called the papers, there are certain chores I want you to perform.
The afternoon papers carried it, of course, and carried it big. Out of the several million persons who read the statement, there were precisely 5 whom Wolf wanted to read it. The first was Professor Adams, who sat next to Lowenberg when he died. The second was Dr. Ernest Patchen, who sat on Lowenberg's left. Number 3 was Dr. Wolfgang, who also sat on the panel that day. The fourth party Wolf was interested in was the widow of the deceased, Mrs. Christian Lowenberg. I went to see the fifth party personally, because Wolf wanted a first-hand report on his reaction. Is there a Mr. Belson, or is that a fancy trade name like Stanley Steeman?
There is a Mr. Belson, but if you don't have an
You take
appointment...
this specially engraved card, $7.50 a 100. And tell Mr. Belson that a perfectly fascinating young man wants to see him about Dr. Lowenberg.
Dr. Lowenberg? But he...
He's dead. That's right. But don't let that worry your pretty little head. Go on. Funny thing about that receptionist, when she left the room, she was beautiful. When she came back, she was only cute, by comparison.
I'm Leslie Gear, Mr. Belson's assistant.
He needs that kind of assistance.
What can I do for you?
Take me in to see Mr. Belson.
Mr. Belson is very busy.
Miss Gear, let's not engage in a duel of wits. Tell the busy Mr. Belson that Archie Goodwin is here to see him. And Mr. Goodwin is Mr. Nero Wolf's prime minister.
Nero Wolf? Come with me.
I've always been an admirer of Belson Aeronautics. Ever since I've been a little boy. I think you people put out a damn fine propeller. Airplanes are terrible, but you sure put out a dandy little propeller.
Work for Nero Wolf?
Yes, sir.
What does he mean saying that Dr. Lowenberg was murdered?
Dr. Lowenberg worked as head of the missile development for this company, did he not?
I'll answer questions when you answer questions. Who hired Wolf to find out if Dr. Lowenberg was murdered?
Who hired Wolf to find out who murdered Dr. Lowenberg is the correct way to phrase that question. The correct answer is, I'm not at liberty to say.
Then get out. Wolf wants answers. Tell him to come and get them himself.
Nero Wolf hasn't left his house since that time I threatened to leave for the FBI. Staying home is one of his little eccentricities.
Another is sending rude young men to ask us stupid questions for him.
At which point I'm supposed to say, oh, come now, Mr. Belsom, can't we
Get out of here!
Oh, don't bawl her out for letting me in. She was helpless in the presence of charm.
I came, I saw. The orchid and I are listening to Scarlatti. I have no proof, but it seems to me that Scarlatti improves the color shading much more than any prelude by Chopin.
What happens when you play rock and roll?
Don't be obscene. What did you find out in the library?
Well, his name is Dr. Christian Peter Lowenberg, aged 43, time of death, born Dusseldorf, Germany, educated various technical institutions.
What did you find out it was not in Who's Who?
I conned the city library. I perused several magazine articles, and I found that this Lowenberg once worked for a man by the name of Goering. Herman? They were building a rocket to shoot across the English Channel. A ridiculous idea. Anyway, I found that this Lowenberg was never a big shot in Germany. He was always an assistant to somebody else's assistant. He once worked for a man by the name of Wolfgang.
Go on.
Well, the war is over, and this rat race begins between us and Russia to find out who could come up with the most German scientists. We get Wolfgang for our Air Force, and he brings Lowenberg over with him as his assistant. But this Lowenberg must have been a smooth talker, because within about 6 months, he had talked himself out of the Air Force and into this cushy job with Belson Aeronautics as head of their missile division.
Anything else?
Well, he had beautiful baby blue eyes, according to one awestruck female feature writer. He must have had some muscle, too, because he was a crack fencer, a devil of a fellow in a sailboat. He was deaf in one ear. He got that way from playing polo, an accident.
I take it that's all you come up with now.
Well, it's a synopsis. I'll type up the details. Anybody call?
Yes. Dr. Adams, Dr. Patchen, Dr. Wolfgang, Mrs. Lowenberg, and Mr. Bills.
All screaming over the phone, no doubt.
Demanding who, just who, has retained me in this investigation.
Did you tell them it was Mr. Figment?
No. I told them I would divulge the name of my employer tomorrow night in this house at 9 o'clock sharp.
But, Mr. Wolf, how can you do that?
Never mind. I need 24 hours before the mob descends upon me. Take out your pad. First, there is an object I want you to find out about. It's in the funeral parlor, or in the coffin, or in the city dump by now. Perhaps you can guess what it is.
I've never heard such tommy-rot in my life. How dare you go around making myself responsible?
Then let me state the case another way. Dr. Lowenberg died, to use what is to me a rather vulgar colloquialism, at the final stroke of the countdown. The moment of death is important because it seems to have led a lot of people to assume that as the tension grew during the countdown, so did the strain on Dr. Lowenberg's heart, until, like a dam, strained beyond its normal capacity, it burst. Emotional excitement, usually a logical explanation of a heart attack. I ask you, however, to consider one annoying fact. Dr. Lowenberg was an athletic man. He played polo, he fenced, he sailed boats. Now, ladies and gentlemen, athletes do die of heart attacks, true. But they do not die of excitement.
All right, then. He didn't get the heart attack from excitement. He got it from any one of 100 purely physical reasons. So what?
At the exact moment of the takeoff, Dr. Patchen, middle-aged athletes die of a heart attack in their office, on the street, in bed, or at any unforeseen ordinary moment. But they do not die at that torturous split second when a voice through a microphone says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Life does not write such cheap melodrama. unless it is so manipulated. Which is why certain parties have seen fit to retain me to determine how Dr. Lowenberg really died.
Okay, so we finally get to it. Who is hiring you, Wolf?
You, all of you.
Oh, sheer and utter
You're
nonsense,
out of your
I tell
mind.
you. I never heard of you until yesterday.
You are more fortunate than most, madame. I make this guarantee I shall bring the murderer or murderers to justice in rapid time. If the police should beat me to the solution, you'll pay nothing.
What do you mean, pay?
My fees are exorbitant.
You know, you're also a fool. I never heard anything so preposterous.
One point seems to have eluded all of you in the general hysteria of the moment. I, Nero Wolf, have stated categorically that Christian Lowenberg was murdered. I'm not a crackpot, a sensationalist, or a paranoid publicity hound. I'm Nero Wolf, and I have some standing in my profession. Only a fool would call me a fool, Mr. Belson. You've already seen what the newspapers do when I state an opinion. I say a man was murdered, and millions of people in this country are convinced that it was murder because I, Nero Wolf, said so. Very well. Whether you know it or not, soon the police will be knocking at your doors. All of you knew the deceased. 3 of you were within murdering distance when he died. Surely you must realize that by now, all of you are under suspicion of murder. You will remain under this dark cloud until the true murderer has been brought to justice. You can ask the police to do it for you, which will be messy, inefficient, and time-consuming. You will suffer acute physical, business, and even social embarrassment for a long time to come. On the other hand, I guarantee to solve the case for you quickly, efficiently, if expensively. Well?
How much?
A gauche question, but a good one. I have here an agreement of retainer. Mr. Goodwin will distribute carbon copies. It is, I assure you, as legally binding as the day is long. And here I have a list of your individual contributions to my fee. The amounts are prorated according to your individual incomes.
Incomes? You've been prying into my personal affairs.
I have, Mr. Belson. Business is business.
This phrase here, to deliver the guilty party within the shortest possible time. On cold numbers, just what do you mean by the shortest possible time?
I mean the shortest possible time. It's a fair figure, Dr. Adams. On a pro rata basis, eminently fair.
You've got me down for $7,000, and you've got him down for $150.
At the risk of sounding offensive to Dr. Wolfgang, I feel that you will miss your $7,000 less than he will feel the pinch of contributing $150. Besides, you can contrive to make it deductible, can't you?
All right. I'm speaking now as your employer. Put up or shut up. Just when do you come up with a solution to this so-called murder?
Now, sir. Right now.
What?
Will you be kind enough to take your place? Archie.
Bless you, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we are fellow members of the only civilization in the history of the race that can raise the past from the limbo of the dead. We don't call it a miracle. We call it motion picture film. Ready, Archie?
Ready, Mr. Wolf.
We will dispense with the sound. I will supply my own. I make no pretense at understanding what goes on here. Ah, now we are in more familiar territory. I'm sure you gentlemen need no introduction to yourselves. I ask you to notice above everything else the hand of Dr. Lowenberg. Sound, Archie.
1, 0.
Enough, Archie. I propound a simple riddle. Why did Dr. Lowenberg reach in his pocket? At the sound of 1, the deafening roar of the takeoff begins. Dr. Lowenberg heard the sound coming up, so he put his hand in his pocket to turn his hearing aid down.
So what, Mr. Wolf? So what?
Very well put, sir. Archie. The late Dr. Lowenberg's hearing aid.
Where did you get it?
What does it matter? It is here. Mr. Faversham, if you please. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Faversham is an engineer employed by the Acutone Hearing Aid Association, manufacturers of this. Mr. Faversham will favor us with a few words.
At Mr. Wolf's request, our laboratory spent last night and this morning examining this particular model. First, we found that somebody had completely reversed the mechanism. That is, in this particular model, when the amplification is turned up, the sound will go down. And if it is turned down, the sound will go up. That isn't all. Cleverly concealed within the case...
Thank you, Mr. Faversham. I will take it from here. Now, any of you scientific gentlemen could have reversed the mechanism, but not every one of you could have done one other thing. That needed a very special knowledge. Now, this particular aid contains an astonishing gadget. Note that it can magnify the frequency of sound to such high degree, so high that it could shock the nervous system and paralyze the action of the heart. Now, take the horrendous sound of the missile takeoff and magnify it with this maniacal device and burst it into the human ear, then you have the sound that kills. Sound that killed Dr. Lowenberg. Now, who would know about such a device? I have here a book, The Story of Nazi Science. On page 122, there's a reference to an invention, the explosive. It says no bigger than a thimble, and yet it could amplify sound to such proportions that when it was tested on prisoners of war, it killed some and drove the others insane. The name of the inventor of this explosive is Dr. Erich Hans Wolfgang.
If you're presuming to accuse me of such fantastic...
Why did you do it, Herr Doctor? Were you jealous of the upstart disciple of yours, so much younger, so much more charming, so much more successful in the new world, which puts such a premium on youth and charm and looks?
Where did you get it? It would be impossible to...
The question is, where did you get it? You could have had this one stolen from Lowenberg and substituted with another one while he worked on it. Now, to steal a man's hearing aid, you could make arrangement with the man's wife, who took it from him while he slept.
No! Never! Not I, never! I know nothing about it, I swear to God!
Tell me where you got it. It would be impossible. Impossible.
Not the wife. No. The wife did not take it from the bedside of the sleeping man. But the mistress could do it. Oh, yes. The mistress could take it.
Why didn't you destroy it? You said you destroyed it.
Now it's beginning to make sense. Dr. Lowenberg and Miss Gier working in the same office, the romantic scientist and the lovely assistant to the boss. Why did you do it, Miss Gier? Did the romantic space scientist tell you were seeking new heavenly bodies?
Where did you get it? It's impossible. We destroyed it.
Of course you did. This is not Dr. Lowenberg's hearing aid. This is merely a duplicate.
Well, who's this guy?
An excellent actor, don't you think? Bravo. A magnificent performance, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I enjoyed it myself.
But how did you know that Lowenberg's hearing aid was rigged like that? How did you find out?
Oh, these are merely details. It is late, and I have a cold. Ladies and gentlemen, you may go home now. And be sure that your bank accounts are in good condition. Mr. Goodwin will be around tomorrow to collect. Good night. Archie, after you've called the police, ring for some cold beer.
So you read between the lines better than any of the other 3 million readers of the New York Gazette. Only you realized that as an athlete, he couldn't have died of overexcitement. What put you on to old Wolfgang?
Well, since he was killed so scientifically, it could have only been a scientist who killed him.
Why Wolfgang?
Sheer elimination. None of the others had ever been involved with high-frequency sound.
And you got all that just from listening to me read the paper to you?
Just so.
No, you didn't.
What are you saying?
No, you didn't.
You're being impertinent, aren't you?
I am, sir. You had read that story before I got here with breakfast. You had it all doped out even before I got here.
Are you accusing me of...
Yes, sir. I read the story to you. And then you said to me, and I quote absolutely verbatim, Archie, what was that in the second paragraph about the dead man's athletic ability? Now, how did you know that line was in the second paragraph if you hadn't already read the story?
Go to bed, Archie. We've got a busy day tomorrow. You have to collect $11,000, the amount due to us, deducting Dr. Wolfgang's contribution of $150, which we can forego under the circumstances.
You're evading the issue.
Whatever you do tomorrow, don't disturb me. I intend to sleep for a week. Please don't interrupt my cold again.
You haven't answered my question.
Good night, Archie.
Good night, Mr. Wolf.
Hi, I'm Otto Penzler. We're in my office at the Mysterious Bookshop, and we're going to be talking today about collecting, and it's going to be about one of my very favorite writers, the writer that I loved when I started reading mystery fiction and continued for as long as I was reading lots for pleasure. It's Rex Stout and his character Nero Wolfe and his secretary and partner and needed person, Archie Goodwin. It has always been my dream that when I retire, I would reread the entire Nero Wolfe series in sequence. Since my retirement seems to be far in the future, I don't know how that's going to work out. Rex Stout is a remarkable character himself. His detective is a remarkable character, but so is Rex Stout. He was born in Indiana. By the time he was 10 years old, he had read 1,000 classic novels. 1,000 by the age of 10. He was the state spelling champion and invented, when he was still fairly young, a school banking system that was used in 400 education departments around the country, which made him quite wealthy. He did some traveling with his money, finished his first book in Paris. It was a novel. His first 4 novels were not mysteries at all. They were written for Vanguard Press, a publishing company that he helped found and ran and helped run. The first book was How Like a God, and it had good reviews, but I have to admit, I tried reading it. It's a struggle. It is not a book that I think you should start with. If you're thinking of starting to read Nero Wolfe or Rex Stout, this is not the book. He continued writing books for Vanguard. All 4 of his non-mysteries were published by Vanguard. I want to show you Seed on the Wind, which is one of those books. And just since we're talking about collecting, I just want to show you a little bit about the importance of a dust jacket. This book, very scarce. Seed on the Wind is not a common book at all. And this is an exceptionally nice copy. The yellow cloth, which usually gets filthy within minutes, is bright and clean. It's $200. Here's a copy of the same book in a dust jacket. And because of the jacket, it's also clean and bright on the inside, but because of the jacket, it's $1,000. And that is a lot less expensive than other copies that I have seen in my day. I could do the same thing with 2 more books from Vanguard. Here's a copy of Golden Remedy, also a very scarce book. It's $150, perfectly nice copy. But here's a copy in a gorgeous jacket, which you very, very rarely see in any jacket, but especially in a fine jacket. And this is $1,500. So when you have books, take good care of the dust jackets. Those books did not have tremendous success, and he stopped and discovered detective fiction. Now, he'd been writing off and on various kinds of articles and so on, because he wanted to be a writer, and wrote for the pulps, wrote some stories for the pulps, and of all kinds. And one was an adventure novel, some were mysteries, vaguely mysteries, but all kinds of things. But it wasn't until he found Nero Wolfe that he began to have success. His first book, Fair to Lance, was so good that it was serialized in the Saturday Evening Post, which at that time in 1934 was the pinnacle of where a writer's work could appear. It paid phenomenal amounts of money for short stories, the kind of money that even the best-selling writer in the world today could not begin to hope to match. I don't have a copy of Fair to Lance for sale at the moment, but I do have a copy of his second book, The League of Frightened Men. I don't have a copy in jacket. I just thought of something that I should show you. I'm going to just keep the camera running. I'm going to show you something that is kind of cool. That's very cool, in fact. Here's an auction copy of Fair to Lance. This was when my collection has been auctioned over the last several months, quite a long time. And the first 3 sales had these beautiful catalogs. And the auction house thought so highly of the Fair to Lance that it made the cover.
And how much did that go for in the jacket?
I don't remember exactly how much it went for. Plenty.
Yeah.
But I think it's annotated, and I can tell you. I'm sure I can tell you. The League of Frightened Men and jacket went for $5,000. The Fair to Lance went for $25,000.
Oh.
So that's not the book that chances are you're going to start your collection with. And they don't show up every day. So $5,000 for the copy of League of Frightened Men in a dust jacket. And I have a very nice copy here in the store. It's $375. Again, big price difference because of the dust jacket. There are very few writers who are as collected as Rex Stout, particularly the Nero Wolfe series. He did write other series characters, Doll Bonner, Theolinda Bonner, Tecumseh Fox, and so on, but none of them had the same following, the same kind of specialness. They were perfectly good books. I read them all and liked them all, but I love the Nero Wolfe books. Nero Wolfe is one of the enduring, eccentric detectives. He is, I think the stories, I assume, since Stout was so well read, that it was deliberate. It might have been a little subconscious, but the whole Nero Wolfe saga is very reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was an eccentric who lived at 221B Baker Street. Everyone knows the address. And he had a partner, the person who wrote about his stories, named Dr. Watson. Wolfe had a partner who wrote about his adventures, was Archie Goodwin. There are familiar characters in the Sherlock Holmes series, like Mrs. Hudson, the housekeeper. Well, in Nero Wolfe's brownstone on West 35th Street in New York, he had Fritz Brenner, his chef, who was a recurring character. His orchid keeper, his botanist, I suppose, who grew orchids on the top of the brownstone, was a recurring character, although not a very colorful one. It just was there. But Wolfe spent 4 hours a day in the greenhouse growing his orchids, 2 hours in the morning from 9 to 11, and 2 hours in the afternoon from 4 to 6, if memory serves. By the way, there are probably members of the Wolf Pack who are watching, and if I make any mistakes, because you know better than I do, don't write to me, because I'm not going to answer you. It's entirely possible that I could make mistakes here, so just don't. So that series, the familiarity of a place, whether it's Baker Street or the brownstone on West 35th Street, was very attractive to readers to come back. You feel like you're coming home to old friends. And I love that about the series. Wolfe had many eccentricities, just as Holmes had his, shooting a VR for Victoria Regina on the wall of his apartment on Baker Street. Nero Wolfe had his eccentricities. One was that he was fat, he was corpulent, 1/7 of a ton. And he said, I keep my fat to insulate my feelings. He did go crazy once and decide to go on an exercise campaign. And what he did was throw darts for 15 minutes a day and persisted in calling them javelins. He hated technology of all kinds, wouldn't get into a car if he could possibly help it. And the only person he trusted him to drive him anywhere was Archie Goodwin. He stayed home as much as he possibly could, and Archie did all of the things that a detective does: hunted down clues, interviewed people, traveled where necessary, got beat up occasionally, beat people up occasionally, but he could come back with all of the information and report to Wolf, who was really the ultimate armchair detective. And Archie could repeat verbatim a 1-hour conversation with 5 people, including inflections and hand movements. Archie was an invaluable part of this series, this beloved series. And there are many people who prefer Archie to Nero because he was such a remarkable character. The series is not easy to collect. I started you off with the 2 most expensive books, but really all of the early books, which were published by Farrar Reinhardt, are difficult to find in really nice shape, and they're expensive in dust jacket. There's no getting around it. But let me show you something important to know. Here's a copy of one of my favorite books in the series, Some Buried Caesar. Again, the condition matters. This is, and it doesn't look bad on the outside, but it's an ex-library copy. It is a first edition. It's $35. Here's a first edition in dust jacket, and it's $2,000. So condition is really crucial. And here's how to tell a first edition, pardon me, with Farrar Reinhardt. You go to the copyright page. If you tuned in to see my series on Philo Vance, my show on Philo Vance, I showed you that on the copyright page, you had to look for the Scribner A, capital letter A, which they started in 1930 to tell a first edition. The second show was about Sue Grafton. And again, I showed you on the copyright page that you had to look at the number sequence to make sure that the number started with 1 in order to tell the first printing of the first edition. With Farrar Reinhardt, they used the logo on the copyright page to distinguish a first edition. It would, a second printing or a later printing would look identical in every way, except it wouldn't have the logo on the copyright page. So, Rex Stout did not do autographs. He did not tour and go to bookshops and sit there and sign stacks of books, which was very, very uncommon for writers in general, except for poets, but almost unknown for mystery writers, really, until I started the Mysterious Bookshop in 1979. As a collector myself, I loved autographed books. And so I started asking authors to come in to sign books, and started a club where people would get autographed first editions every month. But just plain signed books are pretty uncommon for Stout, who did not, as I said, did not do these things. But here's what his autograph looks like. And because the autographs are so uncommon, because he signed so few books, this is a book that would normally sell for $75 because it's just a perfect jacket. This copy is $900 because it's so uncommon to have an autograph first edition in nice condition by Rex Stout. One of the common mistakes that a lot of collectors make when they don't have a whole lot of experience, but they want to collect Nero Wolfe, rightly so. And in fact, some booksellers, in my experience, also don't know this. Almost all of the books, after the Farah Reinhardt books, which were all of the early books, starting in 1946, Stout was published by Viking. And most of their covers are fairly boring compared to the fun books, the fun colors of Some Buried Caesar, which always had a Nero Wolfe silhouette and an orchid, as well as some other illustration. But the Viking covers tend to be a little more boring. They're adequate, but that's all. No offense if you're at Viking and listening. But a lot of people think that they have found a first edition because the Viking first editions have nothing on the copyright page. There is no indication of first printing. There's no number line. There are no letters. It just looks like that. A second printing will say second printing. So it's pretty easy to tell a first edition, except that a lot of book club editions, virtually every book published, every Nero Wolfe book published by Viking had a book club edition because the books were very popular with the book clubs. So they were virtually every one of them was in a book club edition, and they look like first editions. You open the book, you go to the copyright page, and there it is. It says Viking. It doesn't say second printing. It doesn't say anything else. But it's a book club. How do you know? There are two ways. Here's one way. If we can get a close-up on that. That second book, look, it's a half-inch taller. This is because the printing press that was printing all of these books for the book club needed books to be a certain size because they could print 4 books at a time, and it had to fit that exact size. So everything was a little bit different in height than the first edition. The other way you could tell, I don't have 2 copies of the same book, one as a first edition and one as a book club edition, but I could show you the other way. If you look at this, this is pressed paper for the book club edition. The first edition has a much more expensive binding, which is paper but with a cloth spine, a 2-piece binding, 3-piece binding that is a little more attractive and a lot sturdier. So those are the ways you can tell a book club from a first edition. Also, first editions generally, unless they've been clipped, have a price. The price usually appears at the top of the front flap. The book club edition states book club edition on the front flap, but it's at the bottom down there, and it's very frequently clipped off. So you can see there's no price where you'd expect one, but it's clipped at the bottom. So that's my little demonstration of Nero Wolfe. One thing I should say, I've never said it before because I assumed that everybody would expect this. Every book I've showed you is for sale because this is a bookshop. We had several people inquiring recently, oh, could I buy one of those? Is that for sale? Yes, this is not a library. It's not a museum. It's not my personal collection. It's a bookshop. Feel free to call or write if you're interested in collecting any Rex Stout books. Just one more thing I want to show you. The Wolf Pack is an organization of people who are great fans of Nero Wolfe and Rex Stout. And they publish a newsletter on a regular basis. And you can subscribe to this. You can write to me and I'll send you the mailing address. It's the Wolfpack Post Office Box 230 822 Ansonia Station, New York 10023. But feel free to write to me. I can send you the address if you'd like to subscribe and join the Wolf Pack. It's a very cool organization, and the material that shows up in the newsletter, the Gazette, is fascinating on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Get lost!
What have you done to this?
I tried something new.
Saffron and tarragon, you always wrap them in sage leaves. Where's the sage?
The tarragon's fresh, and it wouldn't hurt you to try it.
This is a most unpleasant shock, Fritz. It may possibly be edible, but I'm in no humor to risk it. Remove it, please. Bring me 4 coddled eggs and a piece of rye toast.
He's going to punish me by eating eggs.
Well, I'm off. I am having dinner with a dream girl, appropriately named Dawn.
Dawn? Please, Archie, spare me the rest of the literary details.
I'll get it.
I think you got the wrong house, kid.
Don't Nero Wolf live here?
Yeah, but he doesn't give autographs.
I got a case for him.
What's your name, kid?
Drossus. Pete Drossus.
Come on in, Pete. This is Pete Drossos.
Are you mad, Archie? In the dining room, I am about to have dinner.
Eggs aren't dinner. I mean, he wants to consult you about a case. In the meantime, if you'll excuse me, I really have to run.
Not so fast, Mr. Goodwin. Take Huckleberry Finn with you.
Wait a minute, Nero. I could have gone to the cops, but I came to you.
And by what tortuous route did you arrive at that choice?
He means, why didn't you go to the cops?
Oh, because they would have laughed at me, and I figured you wouldn't. And they wouldn't have listened to me, and I figured you would.
Well, of course we'll listen. Although, truthfully, the timing is rather unfortunate in light of Mr. Goodwin's plans for the evening. But duty supersedes pleasure. Is that not right, Archie?
He means, let's have it, Pete.
Okay, I work the corner, a 6th to 7th and Park. Probably seen me there.
That's highly unlikely.
Mr. Wolf is not what you would call a traveling man. He never goes out.
You're kidding.
Young man, just what is it you do on the corner of 67th Street and Park Avenue?
I work the white bracket. What that is when a car stops for a light, I go out there and wipe the windshield with a rag. It's good for 2 bits, sometimes $1.
And is there much demand for that service?
Well, most of the time all you get's dirty looks. Anyways, a couple of hours ago, this great foreign job pulls up. 2 people. A guy sitting in front, streak of white in his hair, and this dynamite fox behind the wheel.
Fox?
You know, a woman?
No. Well, yes, of course.
Well, she got this scratch down her face and these kind of weird earrings like gold spiders. And she's just moving her lips so the guy won't hear. And she's saying scared like, help police. Then the light changes and that's all, folks. Except for this.
Connecticut, YQ9432. License number?
What else?
Satisfactory.
Well, is it a deal? Are we partners?
Partners? Partners in what?
Come on, a big car like that, a dame in big trouble, gotta be big money around. Like a reward, right?
A reward? Yes, that's a reasonable conclusion.
Hey, what time is it? Holy Maloney, my mom will have a fit. I'll catch you tomorrow, Nero. You can start on the case without me.
Yes, thank you, Peter.
Well, dawn awaits.
Now, Archie, tomorrow see the boy. Get an exact description of the woman in the car. Meanwhile, check out the license number tonight.
You're not going through with this.
Now, didn't you hear there's a lady in distress?
Look, the only reason I brought the kid in was because you were giving Fritz a bad time. He's probably conning you.
We mustn't demean my partner's information simply because he wipes windshields for a living, Archie. Now, you call your lady and make apologies. There will always be another dawn.
Yeah, thanks, a quarter. Look, I wouldn't want you to go without dinner.
Will he live?
It's touch and go.
The driver?
6 witnesses. Male, light complexion, regular features, anywhere from 20 to 40. Wearing a hat, one of those fancy Italian jobs.
Well, it's fairly clear when the boy was run down. He could identify the people in the car. I think what we will
You
have
have a visitor. She's waiting in the front room.
Can't you see we're busy, Fritz?
She said to tell you she's the boy's mother.
They let me ride in the ambulance. He couldn't talk too good. I had to listen real hard. His voice was so small, so weak. He said, "Tell Nero Wolf to find out who got me." He said to give you this. I'd better get back to the hospital. Maybe. You understand?
I do indeed, Mrs. Drossos. $12.35.
It's a lot of windshields.
Mr. Wolf?
Close? This is his house?
He ran an ad in the personal columns of the Times this morning about a woman in a car.
Wearing spider earrings with a scratch on her cheek. Come in. Mr. Wolf's up in the plant.
Yes, Archie, what is it?
This is the lady that came in answer to the ad, Laura Fromm.
Laura Fromm. So it was you who drove the gray foreign car on Tuesday?
Yes.
And it was you who asked the boy to call the police?
Yes, but there was no need to. It was all a misunderstanding. That's what I came to tell you.
I see. And are you now out of danger, Miss Fromm?
Yes. But I want to thank the boy. Would you give him this, please?
Well, the spider earrings certainly match the boy's description.
Well, of course. Why shouldn't they? I mean, I told you I was driving the car.
Archie, would you be good enough to examine the scratch on Miss Fromm's cheek?
Sorry? Done with a small pointed instrument, possibly a needle, but more like a small pair of scissors.
Uh-huh. When?
Yesterday, maybe. More like this morning.
But certainly not on Tuesday.
Not a chance.
That's just as I thought. Miss Fromm, you are a fraud.
I don't know what you mean.
Why did you come here pretending to be someone you are not?
I don't have to answer your questions. I'll find the boy, and I'll thank him myself.
Miss Fromm! The car you say you were driving on Tuesday ran him down in the street yesterday. You can find him in the intensive care unit at Brookview Memorial Hospital. Now, Miss Fromm, do you still insist you were driving the car on Tuesday?
No.
Then why did you come here?
I have to find something out first. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything, I swear. Could you not tell the police, please? Not yet.
If you mean to come back tomorrow.
I promise. Thank you.
I think we may have seen the last of Laura Frome.
A brownstone on West 35th Street in Manhattan. Most people walk by without a second look. This is Nero Wolfe's office, a man who thinks he's the world's greatest detective. Truth being, he is. Wolfe is punctual, especially about meals. Breakfast at 8 in his room, lunch at 12:30, dinner at 6:30. He also weighs 1/7 of a ton. Evening.
Good evening.
I went to the bank this afternoon.
Wow.
Would you like to have the news?
Thank
You're
you, man.
overdrawn.
He's a good boy.
But the bank is hopeful. I told them you have a ship coming in. Smells great, Fritz. What is it?
Starlings. Delivers this morning. Fresh. This is sage. No, sir. What do you mean, no, sir? I thought that you might like advance with saffron and tarragon. Remove it. No, you don't understand. This is...
You did not consult me. To think that without warning, one of my favorite dishes has been radically altered is an unpleasant shock.
It may possibly be edible, but I am no use to risk it. Just please dispose of it and bring me 4 coddled eggs and a piece of toast. Fritz!
I'll take some.
Saffron. Yeah. Really wonderful. Surprisingly a little fat. And there's a glaze or something. Oh, where'd you use that?
That glaze is a secret, but I can tell you one ingredient. Red currant.
Red currant, yes. Yeah.
And you like the saffron, Tarragon?
He doesn't know what he's missing.
Thank you, sir.
Coffee, please, Fritz. Who's that? Someone who doesn't know the rules.
Wrong number.
Guess again. You're Archie Goodwin. I gotta see Nero Wolf.
What's your name?
Pete.
Pete. Got a last name, Pete.
Drosses.
And what do you want to see Mr. Wolf about?
I got a case. I'll tell him.
Now, normally I would run the kid along. Sure, Pete. Come on in. But after Wolf's childish performance with Fritz, I thought it would do him good to have another child to play with. Right in here.
Archie, I will not have interruptions at meals.
You call eggs a meal? This is Mr. Peter Drosos. He wants to consult you about a case. I was going to tell him you were busy, but I remembered how sore you got at Fritz because he didn't consult you. I didn't want you to get sore at Pete because he didn't consult you either. So
Sit down, Mr. Drosos.
Ragging Wolf is always a bit of a gamble.
Turn a little more to face me, please. Thank you. You wish to consult me?
Yeah, I got a case.
I always welcome a case, but timing is a little unfortunate because Mr. Goodwin was going out this evening to see an important billiard match. Now, of course, he'll have to stay here to take down all that you say and all that I say. Happily.
Like I said, always a gamble. All right, young Pete, fire away.
Nah, I guess it's okay. I'm taking it down, but I gotta watch my head. This is strictly under the lid.
If you mean it's confidential, certainly.
Then I'll spill it. It happened about an hour ago. I was at the corner of 35th and 9th, working the white bracket.
Please, what is the white bracket?
You know when a car stops at the light? You hop to it with the rag and start wiping the window. Yeah, well anyway, this caddy stopped for the light. Well, the window was closed, so I couldn't hear her, but she worked her lips. Help, get a cop. The guy stuck a gun in her ribs, and I got a license plate. Connecticut YY9432.
Yes, please. It's excellent.
So what do you think of this case I got?
Well, it seems a little hazy.
Okay, look, the car was a dark gray 52 Caddy. The driver was a good looker. She had on big gold spiders for earrings. Spiders that legs stretched out like so, right? Pure gold.
Pure gold, huh?
Yeah, okay, it looked like pure gold. Well, anyway, these people, they had bucks. So I figured, if he kills her and I identify him, I can get the reward if I hang it on him. But that's when I decided I need to come see you because this case is too big for me to handle by myself. So I figured 50-50. What do you say?
Archie, you have that license number? Call Mr. Kramer's office and give them that number. Say that you have information that that car or its operator may have been involved in a violation of the law in the city in the past hour and suggest a routine check. Do not be more definite. Say that information is unverified and that inquiry should be discreet.
Wait. Who's this Mr. Kramer? A cop?
No, he's an inspector.
But you yourself suggested the possibility of murder, Pete. If there was a murder, there is a corpse. If there is a corpse, it should be found, unless and until it is found. Where's your case? We have no idea where to look for it. So we'll trick the police into finding it for us. I often make use of them in that way. Archie, of course, you will not mention Pete's name since he doesn't want to be marked. Call Kramer.
I called Manhattan Homicide. I couldn't reach Kramer, but I talked to Detective Pearlie Stebbins. I told him all about the case, and of course, I didn't reveal the source.
Excellent. Now your notebook.
Excuse me, what time is it?
Ah, yes, it's 4 minutes to 8.
I gotta be home by 1:45. See you tomorrow.
After that, a billiard match would seem pretty dull. But might as well go.
Beer, Fritz. Sir?
The next afternoon, Wolf was having a beer relapse. He was trying to cut down to 2 quarts a day, and it wasn't going very well.
See who that is and send them away.
Well, I supposed, of course, it was Pete, but it wasn't. It was Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins of Manhattan Homicide West.
Nobody's home. Nuts. I want to see Wolf and you.
All right, this is me.
I know that. Now take me to Wolf. Yesterday evening, you called me about a car, a dark gray Cadillac with Connecticut plates.
I told you we had some information, not checked that the car, the driver, the owner was involved in something.
I know that. Exactly what was your information and where did you get it?
Well, now, you asked me that yesterday. I passed. I still pass. We don't want our informant to be annoyed.
Well, he's gonna be now. Who was it and what did he tell you?
Nothing doing, Pearlie. Now, you know damn well this is just a bad habit of yours. Now, if something happened that makes you feel that I should tell you who and what, you tell me what happened and see if I agree. You know how reasonable I can be?
A couple of hours ago, car stopped for a red light at the corner of 35th and 9th. A boy with a rag starts wiping the window. As he circles in front of the car, it suddenly jumps forward, runs over the boy, keeps going. Driver was a man, alone. A couple of people agreed on the plates, Connecticut, YY9432. Said it was a dark gray Cadillac. Same car you called me about yesterday. The boy died in hospital shortly after the ambulance got him there.
What was the boy's name?
What's that got to do with it?
Just tell me his name.
Drussells. Peter Drussells.
Son of a bitch.
Who? The boy?
No.
Do you tell me or does he?
I wish you luck, Mr. Stebbins. That boy ate at my table yesterday.
Yeah? Well, that makes it bad, huh? People got no business running over boys that ate at your table.
Can I help you, madam?
Does Nero Wolf live here?
Yes.
Do you think I could see him? I won't take long. My name is Mrs. Anthea Drossos.
Yes, Mrs. Drossos.
You are Nero Wolf
I am.
and this gentleman?
Sergeant Stebbins, homicide. He's investigating the death of your son.
My boy Pete would not want me to tell this in front of a cop.
I'll be in the kitchen. Archie?
Well, madam.
You know, my boy was killed.
Mom?
I'm here, Pete.
Go to Mr. Wolf. Tell him what happened.
We're almost at the hospital.
The can where I keep my money. Give Mr. Wolf the money.
Hold on, Pete. Hold on.
Tell him to find the guy that ran me down. Tell him to find.
Here is Pete's money. He made it himself. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand. Archie? This way.
$4.30. A hearty congratulations to you. I figure after deducting for income tax and the 10 cents call to Stebbins, why, there's enough left over to put a pool over here or...
Shut up. Will you return that to her tomorrow?
I will not return it tomorrow or any other day. You know that's impossible.
Give it to the Red Cross.
No, you give it to the Red Cross. Should that woman come back here and ask what we did with Pete's money, I'm not going to feel like saying the Red Cross, and I'm not going to feel like lying.
You brought him into this house.
This is your house. You gave the boy cookies.
You ate a couple of the cookies.
What?
Nothing.
Didn't have a damn single cookie.
What?
I didn't have a cookie. I did not have a single cookie.
Yes, you did. You had a couple of them.
always said it's not so much that you earn the money, but to feel like you've earned the money. So why don't we earn our money?
Woman with spider earrings who on Tuesday at the corner of 9th and 35th Street silently asked a young boy to get the police. Please communicate with Nero Wolf at the address in the phone book.
There's enough money there to run an ad in the Mirror, and if not, I'll throw in a few bucks. I regard that as brilliant. We're using Pete's money for Pete. And since there's not a chance in a million there'll be a nibble, it won't expose you to any work or involvement. What do you say?
Very well. And tell Cohen it has to appear in tonight's edition. Don't explain.
It was almost noon when the ad in the Mirror had baited the first fish. Our old friend, Inspector Kramer.
Where's Wolf?
Ah, Inspector Kramer. I don't think he's expecting you.
Damn right he isn't.
Archie, this is farcical.
Why'd you put that ad in the
I
Mirror?
do not use brassavolas and trigeneric crosses. Now, your notebook, Archie. Dear Mr. Jordan.
I asked you why.
Dear
In reference
Mr.
to
Jordan.
the orchids we discussed last
You
week,
put that
I'm
ad
aware that you
in
have
the
had
Mirror.
no success in performing trigeneric.
Damn it, Wolf!
In specific reference to Vanda Cerulea.
I asked you a
how do you
civil
spell it?
question.
Civil.
Civilize it. Put it your way. Do you know that woman with the spider earrings?
Archie?
I have no idea. Back to the letter.
Yes, please, let's get back to it.
You're covering
Vanda
up something.
Cerulea.
Or someone.
V-A-N-D-A-C-A.
Did you ever hear of Matthew Birch?
Yes.
Oh, so you have.
Yes.
Would you mind telling me when and where?
It's in the newspaper. Here, as reported, the body of a man was found late Tuesday night, or morning rather, in a desolate alley alongside a South Street pier. It is thought a car ran over him.
Except for newspaper and radio items connected with his death. Had you ever seen or heard of him?
Under that name?
Under any name.
Not to my knowledge. Go back. Have you got the spelling?
All right.
Yes, it's V-A-N-D-A, C-A-E-R-U-L-A,
E-A?
E-A.
E-A.
It does not bloom in
Do you have any
does
reason
not bloom
to
in
suspect
May.
or suppose that the man
B-A-N-D-A
found dead in the alley was
doesn't bloom
someone
in
that you
May.
had
I
seen
don't
or
do
heard of in any connection whatsoever?
Ah, that's more like it. That settles it. The answer is no. May I ask one? Have you any reason to suppose or suspect the answer should be yes?
Well, here's the complication. The car that killed that boy was found on 186th Street with the Connecticut plates still on it. Technicians worked on it all morning. They clinched it that it killed the boy. Caught tight underneath the car was a piece of cloth the size of a man's hand, torn from the flap of a jacket, worn by a man named Matthew Birch. So, the same car that killed that boy ran over Matthew Birch. You agree?
For a working hypothesis,
Well, that's the point. You are working on it. You put that ad in.
I'll stipulate that I am capable of flummery. That I have, on occasion, gulled and hoaxed you, Inspector, but you know I eschew the crudeness of an explicit lie. I tell you, I have no client in this matter. Now, I'll admit that the evidence that the boy Matthew Birch
Wolf's office?
killed by the same car is a noteworthy complication.
Yes.
But that should make things easier for you. Even though the license plate may be useless, surely you can trace the car itself.
Yeah, well, we have. It was stolen 4 months ago in Baltimore. It's been repainted twice.
Well, that was interesting. It was a telephone call in reference to orchids.
Thank you, Archie.
Okay. You know, I've never had any notion that you're a crude liar, Wolf. I've never seen you be crude. No. Not crude. No.
Archie, I'm not happy with...
Wait. The phone call.
Hmm?
It was a woman answering the ad. She wouldn't give her name. She made an appointment.
It's lunch.
She made an appointment 20 minutes from now.
Archie, this is insufferable.
So,
Dear Mr. Jordan.
Dear Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Wolf?
No, I'm Archie Goodwin, Mr. Wolf's assistant. Right on the dot.
I am usually punctual.
What can I do for you, madam?
This is a clipping of your advertisement, and this is a check made out to you for $500.
May I see it, please?
Not yet. It has my name on it.
So I would guess.
I want to ask you some things before I give you my name.
What things?
About the boy. The boy I asked to see a cop. I would like to see him. Will you arrange for me to see him? If you could just give me his name and address, I think that would be enough for the $500.
Describe the boy. Describe the other occupants of the car. What time did it happen? What did the boy say? Exactly what did he do? As for your name, that is no longer in your discretion. Mr. Goodwin seizes your bag by force if necessary and examines its contents. If you complain, we are 2 to 1. Sit down, madam. I like eyes at a level. Sit down and we'll discuss it. But first, the name.
My driving license. I am Mrs. Laura Fromm. I am a widow. My New York residence is...
I've noted it. Do you still maintain you were driving the car and told the boy to get a cop?
I do, most certainly.
Then you're in a pickle. The police want to question you about a murder. Yesterday, a car ran over the boy and killed him intentionally.
What are you saying?
It was the same car, the one you professed to be driving when you spoke to the boy.
I don't believe it.
You will. The police will explain to you how they know it was the same car. There's no question about it, Mrs. Fromm. I am not assuming that you were driving the car that killed the boy, but I tell you, merely by being drawn to me by that advertisement and coming rigged in those earrings, you have put your foot in it. And if you stick to it that you were driving the car, you will have fully qualified as a feeble-minded donkey.
I was not driving the car.
That's better. Where were you Tuesday evening between 6:30 and 7?
At an executive meeting for the aid to European refugees.
And the following day, Wednesday?
Where was I?
Same time, 6:30 to 7.
What has that got? Oh. That's when he was struck and killed. I was having tea with a friend.
Friend's name, please.
The friend's name is Paul Kuffner, my publicist. This is a check for $10,000.
I see it is.
It's a retainer.
For what?
It seems as though I'm going to need your expert advice and maybe your help.
Bosh, you're offering to pay me not to tell the police of your visit.
I am Mrs. Damon Fromm. My husband left me a large fortune. I have position and responsibilities. If you were to report my visit to the police, I would arrange to see the commissioner. So, if you would come to my home tomorrow...
I don't go to people's homes.
Fine. Then I will come here at noon. Until then, You will not report my coming here. I must see someone. I must try to find out something. If I don't, you may inform the police. If I do, I will need your advice and probably your help. That's what the $10,000 is for.
Archie, is she Mrs. Damon Fromm?
I would say yes, but I wouldn't sign it.
Archie, go to Mr. Cohn's office and ask to see pictures of Mrs. Damon Fromm. Phone me from there. You will stay here with me.
This is ridiculous.
No doubt, but under the circumstances, not unreasonable. Do you refuse?
No, I deserve it.
It isn't necessary, Archie. You are Mrs. Fromm. Before you leave, an understanding. My decision whether to accept your retainer and work for you will be made tomorrow. You are not now my client.
Understood.
And a question. Do you know who the woman was who was driving the car Tuesday and spoke to the boy?
I won't answer that now because I can't. I really don't know.
But you think you know.
I won't answer it.
Have you ever seen or heard of a man named Matthew Birch?
No, why?
A man of that name was run over and killed by a car Tuesday night. And it was the same car that killed the boy Wednesday. Since the car itself cannot be supposed ruthless and malign, someone associated with it must be. I am warning you not to be foolhardy or even imprudent.
Mrs. Fromm extended her hand. Wolf doesn't usually rise when a woman enters or leaves, but it was lunchtime and the hand was in the way. I walked Mrs. Fromm to the door, spent the rest of the day making sure her check was bona fide.
That woman is 18 minutes late, and I shall not permit this to interfere with my lunch.
She must have heard.
I'm Dennis Horan, counselor at law.
James Albert Maddox, also an attorney. There's been a terrible tragedy.
We must see Nero Wolfe.
Mrs. Fromm's body was found an hour ago. She was apparently run over by an automobile.
Is that the reason you've come to see me?
Mrs. Fromm was a former friend and client.
Not your client.
I advised her.
Badly.
Perhaps it would be well for each of you to tell me, without interruption, to what extent and with what authority you represent Mrs. Fromm.
I represent Mrs. Fromm.
You do not. My firm is counsel to Mrs. Fromm.
I am counsel for the Association of European Refugees.
I am also the executor of Mrs. Fromm's estate. And in that capacity, Mr. Wolfe, I ask you formally, under what conditions and for what purpose did she give you a check for $10,000?
I prefer not to tell you.
Do you know the law, Mr. Wolfe?
No.
Then I suggest you seek advice. I can compel you to disgorge that check unless you can establish that Mrs. Fromm received value for it.
I can't. She received nothing. But I intend to earn that money.
How?
By making sure her murderer is exposed and punished.
It's ridiculous.
We'll see. Am I correct, sir, in assuming that you are not demanding that I return the money Mrs. Fromm paid me?
That depends. Tell me under what arrangement and for what purpose the check was made out, and I will consider the matter.
No, sir, I will tell you nothing whatsoever of the conversation I had with Mrs. Fromm.
Then you're withholding evidence.
Phooey, I will report it to the police. In writing, signed. Archie?
And why not to me?
Because I'm not a simpleton. Because I have reason to think that the conversation that I had with Mrs. Fromm was one of the links in a chain that led to her death. And if that is so, the person most eager to know what she said to me is probably her murderer.
Nonsense.
I am not her murderer.
That remains to be seen.
This is a sham. You're not interested in finding the killer of my client? Excuse me. You're only interested in the $10,000. I'm going to replevy that money.
Archie, call Inspector Kramer.
Wait a minute.
You're making a mistake, Wolf. You say you want to investigate a murder, yet you have two of the people closest to Mrs. Fromm here in your office, and you chased one of them out.
Bosch, will you describe fully and frankly the course and nature of your relations with Mrs. Fromm?
Certainly not.
If I send Mr. Goodwin to the office of the Association of European Refugees, will you instruct the staff to answer his questions fully and freely?
No.
Then I have little use for you. Archie, show Mr. Haran to the door.
Counselor? I wasn't sure Mrs. Fromm would like to be called a socialite. Didn't seem very dignified, but then it isn't dignified to be murdered by a car either. Hey, Lon!
Hey, well, some narrow wolf is on the case.
I was just passing by. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah?
What do you know about Laura Fromm's activities the day she was killed?
What do I get?
Appreciation, respect, trust me.
Yeah. All right, start with lunch. The church show with Paul Kuffner, public relations guy for the AER.
Association European Refugees, yeah.
Yeah, Kuffner told the cops she was worried about something.
What happened after lunch?
Then back to the AER office where Mrs. Wright, executive something, says they spent their time going over the books. When Fromm goes home, meets her personal secretary, friend, and confidant.
Named?
Jean Esty. Esty helps you get dressed for dinner. The butler says they had some argument.
Where's dinner?
Dennis Horan's apartment.
Yeah, who's there?
Just Horan, his wife Claire, Angela Wright, and Paul Kuffner. Dinner breaks early. Rumor is Horan was overly familiar with Mrs. Fromm, so he walks her back to the car, watches her drive away.
Yeah, so he was the last man to see her alive, huh?
As far as is known.
Listen, anything new on this Matthew Birch guy?
What's Matthew Birch got to do with it? Are you saying his murder's connected to Fromm?
What else you know about the guy, huh?
He's a special agent for Immigration Naturalization Services, married, seems to live above his means. What do you got?
Cops seem to have it wrapped up that the same car that killed the kid killed Birch.
Hey, and Fromm was killed by a car also. That's sweet, Archie. That's very sweet. So who hired Nero Wolf?
Nope, not yet.
Hey, what do you mean? Come on, come on.
I promise you I'll give you an exclusive later.
Hey, Archie.
No tasting.
Wasn't tasting, I was sampling.
Must explain to me the difference someday. Inspector Kramer was here.
Any blood flow?
You have to ask him yourself.
The top floor was devoted to Wolf's second obsession, orchids. I can tell you.
Wrong. Dendrobium. What information did you obtain from Mr. Cohen?
Well, Miss Fromm had quite a busy social schedule. And so I told him. Wolf sat there with eyes closed and nose twitching. With her publicist, Mr. Kuffner. And, when I finished, he held his pose for a long moment, absorbing everything. I think. Then, he opened his eyes.
Kramer was here.
Yes, so Fritz said.
Yes, he was uncommonly offensive. He intimated that had I told him yesterday of Mrs. Fromm's visit, she would not have been killed. He was insufferable. How old is Jean Esty?
Lon didn't specify. He thought young, I suppose under 30. Why?
Is she comely?
No data.
Get her and bring her here.
Get her and bring her here. Well, that's Nero Wolf. How was I even going to get to see Jean Esty? I concocted and rejected 4 different plans.
Yes?
Yes, there seems to be some confusion about the flower arrangements for the funeral. I must consult with Miss Esty immediately. Mr. Goodwin is the name?
This way, please.
Thank you.
What's this about flowers?
Miss Jean Esty.
Yes. What about flowers?
Yes, that's why I've come to see you. Have you heard the name Nero Wolf?
The detective?
Yes.
Well, certainly.
Good. He sent me. Mr. Wolf would like to know if there would be any objection to orchids. Miltonia, Rosely, Alba. They're pure white and quite beautiful. Grief. grief, quite accustomed. We have it under control. Thank you. Thank you. You see, what?
What started me was the way you're dressed. Oh, it's grotesque.
Yes, well, the costume merely got me in.
Yes,
Yes.
I understand. Under false pretenses. And what for?
Mr. Wolf would like to invite you to dinner. Are you aware that Mrs. Fromm gave Mr. Wolf a check for $10,000 yesterday?
Yes, I handle her personal checking account.
Ah, did she tell you what the check was for?
No.
Well, I can't tell you either. But I can tell you that Mr. Wolf feels responsible for Mrs. Fromm and feels an obligation to investigate her death.
Oh, the police are investigating it.
Ah.
2 of them left here just a half an hour ago.
Yes, the police. I'm sure they'll do a very fine job and they'll solve it. But if they don't, Mr. Wolf will. Don't you want Mr. Wolf to solve it?
No, it doesn't matter what I want.
Well, it matters to Mr. Wolf, and that's why he's inviting you to dinner. Our offices are at 35th Street. We could be there in 15 minutes. Shall we go?
I'll go now.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Look, I may be in the middle of this mess, but I'm not going to say or do anything to make it worse than it already is. Now, I've been instructed.
Ah, Miss Esty, there you
I'm
are.
Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolf. I'm in disguise.
I'm Paul Kuffner. I handle public relations for Mrs. Fromm, and I am not in disguise. I'm sorry to break in like this and take Miss Esty away, but there are urgent matters. Upstairs, please, Miss Esty. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Goodwin. I've heard a great deal about you and Mr. Wolf. Ah, Peckham. Mr. Goodwin is leaving. See him to the door, would you?
It was a fine job. He could have said, "Get out of this house till I ask Miss Esty what you're trying to put over." But no, sir.
Gentlemen, Fritz has provided us with some lovely homemade cookies, in case any of you is interested. Napkins are provided.
Hello, everyone. I'm a mortician. Saul, Fred, Ori. Saul, Fred, and Ori, our best freelance operatives, were waiting when I got back to the office.
So you went to Miss Esty dressed as a
mortician.
Ah.
This got me in. Unfortunately, Miss Esty, with the well-timed help of a Paul Kuffner, refused your dinner invitation.
You don't look very alert.
Huh.
Sit down, Archie. Remove the silly cap. So, I must inform you of the situation in all of its intricacy. The police will tell me nothing. With all their advantages of manpower and authority, they will certainly forestall us. But I intend to persuade myself that I am justified in keeping Mrs. Fromm's fee. And besides, I resent the assumption that those who come to seek my help may be murdered with impunity. That's the personal reason.
We'll get the bastard.
I doubt it, Fred. But we will try. There are dozens of possible approaches to the problem. So, Saul, tell me, where do you want to start?
I'd kind of like to start with that AER place, that refugee joint.
Mrs. Fromm's organization. Why?
Because they're interested in refugees, and Birch used to be with the Immigration Naturalization Service. And that's the one connection I could see between Birch and Mrs. Fromm.
Very well. Take $200 in expenses. But a displaced person would not be lavish.
Yeah, I know that.
I'll start with the spider earrings. Not that I've seen any. How big were they?
Archie?
Like so. Like so.
Were they gold?
I think they were gold, but don't quote me.
Very well, Archie. Give Ori $100. What about you, Fred? Where do you start?
The earrings.
No, they're covered. Has anyone a suggestion for Fred?
We'll think of something.
Let's try this. I assume that on Tuesday afternoon, when the woman driver stopped at the corner and told the boy Pete to get a cop, that the man in the car with her was Matthew Birch.
Well, I don't get that, Mr. Wolf.
Good, then it probably hasn't occurred to the police. Now, I admit that this is extremely tenuous, but later that night, the same car ran over and killed Matthew Birch in a place and manner indicating that it had carried him to the spot. Therefore, since Birch was in the car late in the evening, why not assume that he was in the car early in the evening?
Well, the assumption would be that the man that ran the car with the boy on Wednesday was the same guy who was in the car with the woman on Tuesday.
Yeah, because whoever he was, he knew the boy could identify him.
Yeah, right. And it couldn't have been Birch because by Wednesday, Birch was dead.
That's probably what the police assume.
It sounds logical.
Fred, you will proceed on my assumption that Birch was in the car with the woman. Try either to validate it or disprove it. Archie will supply you with a photograph of Birch. Archie, could you get photographs of everyone involved?
Tomorrow?
Do so. And then there's something I want you to do. Thank you, gentlemen. Archie will coordinate your efforts.
Morning.
Have you any questions about the instructions I gave you last night?
One. It's clear enough as far as it goes, but what am I after?
You're stirring them up. You're turning a tiger loose in a crowd. Or if that's too bombastic, a mouse. How will they take it? Will they tell the police? If so, which one are ones?
Sure. I see the possibilities. Is there a specific item I should retrieve?
No, none.
What?
You've been eating corned beef.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I've been eating corned beef. Yeah. Not on the premises.
Well, no costume today. Representing Nero Wolfe.
Yes, but not exactly.
Oh,
I'm here on my own.
on your own. But don't you work for Nero Wolfe?
I like to get work for me, too, when I get a chance. Read the other side.
You discuss what Mrs. Fromm told Mr. Wolfe.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to talk with you about, but just between you and me.
I don't understand.
Oh, you soon will. You see, I was present during the talk that Mrs. Fromm had with Mr. Wolfe. I remember all of it. I have a very good memory. I could recite it to you word for word, or mighty close to it.
Well,
I think you'd appreciate hearing what that talk was. I have reason to believe that you would find it most interesting, and I will recite it to you word for word for $5,000.
oh,
Now, I don't expect you to have that kind of money right now. You can pay me this afternoon, but I must be paid in advance.
this is incredible. Why on earth should I pay you 5 cents to hear about that talk, let alone $5,000? Why?
Well, that would be telling, wouldn't it? After you pay and I deliver, you may or may not decide whether you got your money's worth.
And what if I told Mr. Wolfe about your offer?
I'd say you're a liar. He trusts me. I'd simply say you were a dirty liar.
Well, I suppose I should be insulted and indignant, but I'm too shocked. I didn't know you were a common skunk. You should go.
Yes, well, think about the offering.
I'm looking for a Mrs. Moran.
Thank you, sir. Just across the street.
Mrs. Moran.
Do I know you? Do we know each other? Quiet, darling. Do I?
Not exactly. But we're about to meet.
Oh, a detective. Working with Nero Wolfe.
For Nero Wolfe. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yes, my husband saw him the other day. What day was it? I'm not sure. If you're looking for him.
No, Mrs. Moran, actually. Turn the card over.
To discuss what Mrs. Fromm... with me, why would I be interested?
Oh, Mrs. Fromm visited Mr. Wolfe, and
Mrs. Fromm.
I was present throughout their
She
conversation.
tried to help all those people.
Their entire conversation. You see, I heard everything that was said, and to satisfy your curiosity, I will tell you for $5,000, and I will pay it back the day it rains up instead of down. How about that?
What an amusing idea.
Yes.
Raining up instead of down.
Yes.
Would it be raining from the clouds up or up from the ground to the clouds?
Well, either, actually.
I think I like it better raining up from the ground.
Ah, Well, we're not really talking about the rain, are we, Mrs. Horan? You see, I'm willing to sell you some information about what Mrs. Fromm might have said to Mr. Wolf.
But why would that interest me? Oh, I see. You mean she told him something awful about me? That doesn't surprise me any. What was it?
Well, I'm not sure you understand exactly what I'm talking about here. Maybe I need to make myself perfectly clear. First, you give me the money. Then I give you the facts. See?
Do you know what I think, Mr. Goodwin?
No, I do not.
I think you're much too fine a person to use these kind of tactics to stir up my curiosity.
Well, if it's the money, we could...
I thought you were a nice man. You have kind eyes. Did you know that? I thought you were a nice man, but I can see I was wrong. Yeah, what?
Well, that's not necessary. Oh, no. Bad dog. Bad. Hey, could you just have him stop? Well, it's dangerous out in the front lines, but I still wasn't ready to give up on my quest for $5,000. This is the Association for European Refugees.
Yes, it is.
Just like the sign says, well, I'm here to see Angela Wright.
She's busy.
I'll show her this card.
She's busy.
Show her the card, she'll see me.
Mrs. Wright will see you, corner office.
I told you so.
You're next, Mr. Hyde.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Come in.
Afternoon.
You represent Mr. Nero Wolf. I suppose you're a detective also.
Well, actually,
Are you trying to solve her murder?
Well, actually, what I'd like to do is I'd like
I
to...
can't see why anyone would wish Mrs. Fromm dead.
Yes.
No matter how overbearing she could be. She was doing such humanitarian work.
She certainly was.
You know, the AR is a private organization supported by wonderful people like Mrs. Fromm, which helps immigrants to find jobs and provides legal and financial assistance.
Yes, that's very touching.
If it were not for Mrs. Fromm, I might never have been able to come here.
Oh.
What a tragedy her death is.
Terrible, terrible tragedy, huh? Yeah.
So, how can I help you?
Well, are you aware that Mrs. Fromm visited Mr. Wolf the day she was killed? Murdered?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
But we were not so close that she confided in me.
I see. So then you wouldn't be interested in anything Mrs. Fromm had to say to Mr. Wolf?
About me?
For $5,000, I'll tell you exactly what the conversation was in detail.
So it does concern me. Sit down, Mr. Goodwin. Perhaps we can arrange something.
I'm sure we can.
Shall we put your offer in writing?
You take me for a sap.
A zap?
For a fool.
Oh, if you were a fool. No, if you were so dishonest. Wouldn't Mr. Wolf? I mean, he is a detective. You agree?
You see, the thing is, I've fallen on hard times recently. And, well, I've never done this before. My mother, cancer.
Ridiculous.
What?
Ridiculous.
What is ridiculous?
Mr. Goodwin, I resent being taken for a sap. Is that it, sap? That's my vanity. Tell Nero Wolf. Tell him my mind being underrated by him. And tell him that I think he is a sap. For thinking he can fool me with such a crude trick.
But, Miss Wright,
Yes, Mr. Goodwin.
Good luck to all of you. After Angela Wright, I had one more offer to make. Paul Kuffner. But I called Wolf to report.
Archie, come home at once. Mr. Kuffner is here, and I want to see you.
No!
Don't sit there, Archie. Your right to sit at that desk is suspended. Move, please, move. Mr. Kuffner has a shocking accusation. Sit there. Kuffner.
A woman I trust says that you offered to tell her about the conversation Mrs. Fromm had with Mr. Wolf if she would first pay you $5,000 in cash.
What was the woman's name?
I have not told Mr. Wolf because one was requested not to. Of course, you know it.
I've forgotten. Tell me.
No.
For God's sakes, if you were a U.S. Senator, I wouldn't expect you to name the accuser. But since you're not, go climb a tree.
He has a point, Mr. Kuffner. Anonymous accusations are in questionable taste. You should name her.
I was asked not to.
Then I'm afraid we're at an impasse.
May I smoke?
No.
It was Angela Wright.
Archie, did you make Angela Wright such a proposal as described by Mr. Kuffner?
No, sir.
Did you say anything to her that could have reasonably been construed as such a proposal?
No, sir.
Then you may sit at your desk. Mr. Kuffner, I'm afraid we're at a dead end. If it is an issue of veracity between Mr. Goodwin and Mrs. Wright, I believe Mr. Goodwin.
Yes, you would. Of course. And even if I could prove such an offer was made, where would it get me? Look, Wolf, we haven't much time. I must get to Mrs. Fromm's funeral. But you should know that my professional function was to give advice to my clients. Mrs. Fromm and the association relied on me to handle their affairs so that their activities would be regarded in a favorable light. I will do anything in my power to see that Mrs. Fromm's reputation is not damaged. And while I see no connection between the association's affairs and her death, I believe it is possible, indeed probable, that there is a connection between Mrs. Fromm's death and a talk with you. Now, if I'm to further my client's interest, I need to know about that conversation. I've tried to talk to the police about it, but they won't tell me, so you must. I'll pay you $5,000 for it.
Which is it, Mr. Kuffner, black or white? 5 minutes ago, you were going to report an iniquitous proposal. Now you're ready to be a party to it. An extraordinary ethical somersault.
I have the cash with me.
No, Mr. Kuffner. I'm afraid to deal with you. You're too agile for me.
You can't deny me. You can't. As a representative of Mrs. Fromm's interests, I have the right to demand it.
You'll be late to the funeral.
Laurie had used his connections in the jewelry trade to locate a store on 46th Street where the Golden Spider earrings had been displayed in the window. When Ori asked about them, the proprietor clammed up. Now it was up to me to open that clam. Somehow.
Who's it, Irving?
I don't know, Papa.
Oh, it's you again.
Who are you? Archie Goodwin. We work for Nero Wolf.
The detective.
That's right. I want to ask you something about the murder of Pete Rosas.
Who's that, a gangster? I know nothing about gangsters.
And he was a 12-year-old boy, just like your son here.
Irving, go. Do your homework. Now. A boy murdered? Why don't you say so? Come, explain. I still don't understand why this boy was killed. And by the same car. So you want what?
Want to know who bought those earrings?
Those spiders?
That's right.
One of a kind. I gave her a good price.
Yeah, how'd she pay?
By check.
By check? What was the signature?
The name?
Yeah.
It was the woman who was murdered. Laura Fromm.
Ah, Laura Fromm. You've been most helpful. Thank you. We're back. We tracked down the earrings. Guess who bought them?
Mrs. Damon Fromm.
You knew?
No, Ori. I was asked to guess. Now I know. Good work, Ori. Saul phoned. He started something, but he's not sure what.
Yes, I know. I told you I saw him at the association office.
Yes. He calls himself Leopold Heim. Under that name, he has taken a cheap hotel on First Avenue. After you left the association office, he had a brief talk with Angela Wright.
Who referred you to our organization?
Special Agent of Immigration and Naturalization. It was Birch, Mr. Matthew Birch.
Oh, really? Mr. Birch is dead.
Dead? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. A few weeks ago, he told me to come here, so here I am.
You entered the country illegal.
Well, yes and no.
Yes.
I was told this association would be able to help people like me.
The association cannot be an accessory to a violation of the law.
No, I understand. No, of course not. I don't know what I should do.
Consult with a lawyer.
A lawyer? I don't know any lawyers.
Here is a lawyer you can trust. Dennis Horan.
No money.
He works for the association. It's a service.
A service. It's very kind. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Saul went to Haran's office and told him of his plight.
Mr. Heim, you have a very big problem. Many people like you come to me every day, but I'm only able to help a very few. However, there may be a solution to this mess. Where can you be found?
Hotel. The Hotel Duval in room 312.
Go to your room and wait.
I go.
Tonight.
Wait.
This evening.
This evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I really appreciate it very much. Thank you.
So Saul went back to the hotel. At 8 p.m., he had a caller.
Just a second, please. Just 1 minute. Please. Yes, come in. The door is open.
You Heim?
Who are you?
I'm here to help you.
What do you mean? How are you going to help me?
I'm aware of your predicament, and I sympathize. But don't worry. You want help, don't you?
Yes, I need help. Of course I do.
You're illegal.
Illegal? Well, in a manner of speaking.
That means the FBI and the police have to be dealt with. It's going to be costly.
So you want how much?
$10,000.
What? $10,000? But for what is it $10,000?
To prevent any kind of exposure or harassment.
No, you don't understand. I have nothing. $10,000 is a ridiculous amount.
You can do it by the month, by the week, a little bit here, a little bit there.
I see, for a little bit from the week and the month. Yes, I could. And the papers are then good, yes?
Guaranteed. Remember, any attempt to alter this arrangement would be disastrous. Sleep on it. I'll be back.
Sure. Sir, I want to thank you. I appreciate very much. You're helping me.
Well, easy there, young fella.
When he left, Saul managed to follow him. The man is now at a restaurant on 3rd Avenue and 14th Street. Saul called from across the street at, well, it was less than a half hour ago.
I'll take the sedan and drop Ori at Saul. And I'll lay back with the car. Nero Wolves.
Archie, it's Fred. Is the boss there? He ought to hear this.
Hey, Fred. It's Fred. Take a taxi, all right? Go to Saul's. It turns out that Fred needs me worse than Saul. I'll come and join you.
Go on, Fred.
I'm at a phone booth, 9th Avenue, 55th Street. I just found out a lot of new stuff about Matthew Birch. His main hangout was a dump on 9th and 54th, Danny's Bar and Grill. I've been in and out all day asking about Birch, telling people my name was O'Connor and what was eating me, as I've been told that my wife was seen with him in a car last Tuesday afternoon, a dark gray Cadillac. One guy finally told me that there's a guy who can give me the lowdown on Birch, and if I want to see him, come back between 9:30 and 10.
Go ahead and play it, but wait till I get there. I'll take the sedan and park across the street. When you see the car, go on with your day. I'll wait in the car until I hear you scream or they roll your corpse out. If you leave with company, I'll tell you. Otherwise, walk along 42nd Street, keep going, and I'll wait until you're loose, and then I'll come get you. You got it?
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Wolf?
No, proceed. You know I dislike guns.
So do I, except in situations where I might get knifed, plugged, or shoved off a building. I lay back and waited. I decided to wait half an hour until 10:19, but I didn't have to wait that long. The driver didn't spot me tailing him, but he drove kind of fast, a little too